All right, today we're going to go through a little experiment. We have the dual flight controller test rig here. We're going to have a FalcoX flight controller mounted here on the bottom. So this is an old Revolt board, and then a Betaflight flight controller on top. Of course, on the Betaflight one, we can get logging, so we can fly the craft with FalcoX, but log it based on Betaflight. So in this video, we're going to go through the setup that I have. And over the next couple of videos, we will check out defaults, check out a preset, and we'll compare it and see what we can glean to some of the settings in FalcoX. Okay, so what I have set up here is FalcoX plugged in with the flight controller with the FalcoX configurator. And then I have the Betaflight flight controller plugged in as well with, of course, the Betaflight configurator here. So FalcoX, of course, I have my transmitter to control this. So if I enter into the OSD, I can now control my OSD here. And just a general setup, and I've talked about this before, what I have going on here is my receiver is wired to both flight controllers. So as you can see here, as I move my sticks here, you can see the determer. Let's go pitch. As you can see, as I stick down on pitch, you can see the Betaflight registers the pitch moving, and then also FalcoX is doing the same thing. So what I want to do here is set the default and then take a look at roll, pitch, and yaw. I guess a couple things so I think I kind of got this set up, but just to run through it, you can see here on the default that the RC smoothing is set to none. So I have this set in Betaflight to interpolated and then off, and that turns off RC smoothing altogether. And looks like they have sim mode enabled on default, whisper mode disabled. You can see kind of the settings here. And then I will go to my PIDs tab, and the PID stuff you gotta take with a grain of salt because it's not, it's not exactly the same things. But when I'm doing this, I try to get as close as I possibly can. So for that, you can see on my roll access here, I have 38, and I've set these up already. 38, 40, 16. That's what, this is really 15.5. So I'll just round it to 16, I guess, because this only does integers. And then, and then pitch, you can see same 39, 40, and here I just rounded it again to 16. And you can see here for yaw, we have 40. Now I gotta change this 42 because I was looking at the self level before. 44. And they still do D-term on yaw, which whatever. It's weird, but we'll go ahead and do that. And then we're back to roll. So it's roll, pitch, self level. And self level, we're not going to use self level, but you can see they're using 50 and 40. I would assume that is, well, they have a P and an I for self level. So they have a PI controller for self level mode, which, yeah, makes some sense. Betaflight just uses these PIDs for self level mode. It doesn't use like separate PIDs. So there's no one-to-one correlation there. You'd have to have, I don't know, it uses these PIDs. This has its own PIDs for P&I for self-level. So that's that. You can see here we're still on the default preset. If I go off of this, if I change any of these settings, this would go to custom. So we don't want that. I like the Blackbird V1 rates. So for that, I went over to here, selected my race flight rates, and you can see now, so this was 380 up here. So 380. Let's go back to here. What I want to do is this is actually pitch. So you can see I did 380 for roll, 380, and for pitch, so for yaw, I did 370. Again, this still does integers, I believe, yeah. So you can see I can only click it up or down by one complete integer there. You can see there's some deadband there. I put in my normal deadband, and smooth stop is off by default. So that's basically like their I-term relax that Betaflight has. So yeah, we'll leave that off. I did a quick test flight. We're going to need to turn that on because it's my term bounce back. But hey, that was actually on the Blackbird rates just to see that logging was working. So we'll just leave it for now. For filters, you can see 170 and 80 I have here. Now they have, this is the frequency filter is a PT1 filter. It's even talking with Preston back in the day. So the dynamic filter, I'm not exactly sure. There's that code thing that I'm sure I could figure it out, or somebody could take a look into what the dynamic filter actually is and does, since kind of the code's on the street for FalcoX. But for now, we'll just kind of ignore that. Again, we're just looking at, with stick inputs, how does the quad actually react? So we're only looking at set point and gyro. Some of this other stuff is just kind of icing on the cake, just to get it as close as we can, but it's not one-to-one, so we can't, it's not like we can look at the P term that Betaflight is doing, being like, oh, that's exactly what FalcoX is doing. It's not going to work like that. I set all the stuff up to be equivalent just because I can, and try to get as close as I possibly can, but it's not like this filter stuff. We're going to be like really threading the needle on it and looking at, how Betaflight's filtering it and saying, well, that's exactly what's happening on FalcoX's side. It's not exactly one-to-one. Now for D term, it is, because they're both biquads here, and then we just have two static filters, and they have the anti-aliasing filter off, which is kind of a funny name. All low-pass filters are anti-aliasing filters, so whatever. So we'll save that. Go to the profile here, the rates profile, and you can see TPA. If I go to FalcoX on the P, I, and D, which in Betaflight you don't have those options. It's TPA is on the D term by default only, and you can switch it to be on all the PIDs. It's either P, I, and D, or just the D term. D term is by default. So you can see it doesn't really matter here because they're all 100%. So with FalcoX's default profile there, this would be 0 in Betaflight. So basically there's no TPA. VTX stuff doesn't matter. Peripherals really doesn't matter. Let's go to here. I did wonder what DShot 8 is. You can see there's a ESC protocol, and you can see ProShot 32, 16, multi-shot, DShot 64, DShot 32, DShot 16, DShot 100, DShot 8. So default is 8. I will leave it at 8, but if anybody can clarify me on what 8 is, I'd appreciate it. Motor idle, all this stuff seems fine. All the motor directions are good. I did all the setup stuff already, so we're good there. Arming type, I have the single, but the first time I arm it, I still have to arm it twice. Then after that, I only have to arm it once. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a bug or it's intentional to be that way. I'll leave the auto Coupa the same. These are all defaults. I got my switches set up. So I have, let's go back here. I have my motor beeper. I have that all set up. I don't need to set it again. My arming switch, all that good stuff. OSD doesn't matter. This Revolt doesn't even have an OSD. You can see what I have for protocols here, battery voltage, and we are good to go. Again, I'm going to do logging here at 2K gyro scale so we can get the raw noise, and then we'll see, we'll see the raw noise of the quadcopter. We'll see the filtered noise by Betaflight, which is as equivalent as I can get. And then more importantly, we'll be able to see what the set point is, or what I'm commanding with my sticks here, and then how Flight 1 is commanding the quadcopter to move. So we'll be able to see if there's bounce back in certain conditions, or what happens when we turn sim mode on versus off versus different levels of sim mode. How does it all react? And then ultimately in the final video, I'm going to flip everything around so the Betaflight flight controller is flying it. And so we're going to kind of tune both up and see what we compare the differences between the two. If you have any input on you're seeing anything I'm missing, or just any input in general, greatly appreciate it. Throw that down in the comments. Thanks everybody, and I hope this helps.